And I will go ahead and share screens so we can all be looking at them and go through them. Before we get started, was there anything that stood out to anyone that you want to be sure that we spend time on? Or I felt like a lot of the changes were fairly minor, but maybe somebody saw something else. Okay. All right. Let me go ahead and share screen. Okay. Okay, so they gave us a PDF, not a Word document. So I'm going to go ahead and because of the formatting in the PDF, I wasn't able to figure out how to put it into a Word document. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this, and then I'll take notes as if we make any alterations. The other thing that will be helpful, I think, is probably having I can switch between screens so that you can see the original survey as well as the requested changes. So, and I like the way that OHSU included the justifications. So strike through is what they want to remove, yellow is what they want to add, and then the purple is the reason for it. So enrolled but on leave, as far as current enrollment status, that seems like that makes a lot of sense. Does anyone have any objections to approving that one? Okay, great. The next one, they again are I think making changes that make a lot of sense for their campus. They don't have associate's degrees. They don't have personal or professional development or are taking classes for another reason. I kind of feel like for this one that we should keep maybe I am taking classes for another reason, just because they I don't know. I don't know. I feel like if we
I agree with you.
leaving folks an option for a response that doesn't fit in with any of the givens makes sense. But what do other folks think about that?
I agree with you. When you read it, I was like, well, why take that out? I can see if the other two are not specific to their campus. This is generic. So
I agree. I think there may be use cases that they might not capture if they don't do this.
Yes. Let's see if I can highlight the one. Yeah, so I'm suggesting that we ask them to leave that in. Is there anyone who thinks that it's okay to take that out or has any thoughts about that one?
I agree with the Dea's point. There's just no reason to take it out. It
Okay.
doesn't, and it's, you just never know how somebody's going to understand the question. It just leaves a space so that you don't get cognitive.
Kelly, I see you.
Can you hear me? Hello?
I can hear you, Kelly.
Yes, we can hear you, Kelly.
Okay.
I can't hear you. I'm so sorry. Can other
Uh,
people hear you?
They all said they could.
Yes.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear other people, Rowan?
Kevin, are you able to hear Kelly? Yes, and I am not. Okay. Right. Kevin, can you try talking?
Yeah, I've been talking, so.
Yeah, I can't hear you either.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me stop sharing for a second. Okay. Kevin, can you try talking again?
Can you hear me now, Rowan?
There. Okay, fine. Got it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Kelly, I'm so sorry.
Oh, not at all.
Okay.
Are you hearing me now, Rowan?
Yes.
Okay. I was just agreeing with the day. I think it's just it's an important principle that you just never know how people are going to struggle to find themselves in a list of answers. So why remove the open-ended option that makes it easier to keep moving through the survey? So let's keep it.
Okay, thank you. All right. And I apologize, when I am sharing screen, I can't see the chat, which is really annoying. I don't know how, if anyone has found a workaround about that, I'd love to hear about it, but. Okay. All right, for the next one, I can make this go away. Okay, come on, go away. There. I thought that actually this edition, it's hard, I know it's hard to read on the screen, but it's for, do you identify as a person with a disability or other chronic condition? They want to change the language from just yes to yes, and I receive formal accommodations through the Office of Student Access, and yes, and I do not receive formal accommodations through the Office of Student Access. I thought that made sense. Does anyone have any thoughts about it? The one thing that it does is it might make it easier to identify an individual respondent.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I think it's a great, um, yeah, there's a small amount of people who do receive services. So I think, my school has a lot. I remember in the iPads, most schools have under actually formally having some kind of agreement on the file and utilizing. Um, it might, but it might give some more information about what the student is going through, a barrier or something like that, and that they think that could be an identity issue. I don't know. The reason why they're experiencing whatever they're experiencing.
Mhm.
I second that. I think it might make it easier for those students who maybe if they have had an experience of sexual misconduct and they identify as a person who has a disability or chronic condition but doesn't receive accommodations, might make it easier for them to get accommodations in the future. I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Okay. So
What do you say, Kelly?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think I'm curious about whether or not there might be students who are not sure if they receive accommodation support through that specific office or if they've received accommodations in other spaces, like maybe through certain testing centers. And so I wonder if it might, by being more specific, might lose some people who don't know where to answer.
So could you just say through the university and or through official channels at the university or something like that to make it more generic? Some people go through one office for that, but maybe some schools have different type of things. Maybe like that.
So I'm going to jump
Yeah,
in.
or maybe even one that's a.
Oh, so sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
Oh no, I was gonna wait till I'm assuming that you've got something that's gonna help clear some of this up.
Yeah, hopefully. So I work with OHSU pretty pretty closely because we share their bachelor's degree program that they mentioned is actually on my campus. And so Angela, the Title IX coordinator for them, and I work together pretty closely. And that they only have that one office of student access, just so there's not an additional touch point for them to get service. So that's the only avenue for services, for academic services for students on their campus. So I can verify that.
Do we think it would make sense to have a third option that says yes, and I'm not sure / do not wish to disclose if I receive services?
Well, we do have the unsure, I don't know, and prefer not to answer. And if their question, I recognize your point. I think it's a good one, Ian, that they might be receiving academic accommodations from just one professor who's like, okay, you can have 5 minutes longer. But it seems like they're really trying to, this is for them trying to drill down to figure out if there's a difference between students who are receiving formal accommodations and students who don't receive formal accommodations.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense.
Okay. Right. So okay to approve the change as requested? Anyone who thinks, let's have more discussion or? Okay.
I think this is a case where I think there's probably a better change than this, but I'm not sure that we're going to know what that change is. And so
Okay.
maybe approve and see if they decide in the next iteration to change it to something else.
Okay. I can also ask, if they want to consider adding an option that is, I receive accommodations, but not through, I receive informal accommodations or something like that. Would that address your concern, Ian?
No, I think mine goes back to the concern about students who might read this and be worried that it would make it easier to identify them. So I think
I
having
see.
an option that's like, yes, I identify this way, but I'm either unsure if I receive accommodations or do not wish to disclose whether I receive accommodations
Okay.
would both capture if a student identifies this way but does not want to be identified.
Okay. Got it. Okay, I'll include that in the feedback. Okay. All right. Okay. Next one, they have different kinds of housing. They don't have dorms, but they do have students that receive support from their program through rotational or clinical experience. So this is just a way of customizing the options to match their student population. So I live in campus housing or housing provided by my academic program during the school year. I think that totally makes sense. Any discussion there? Okay, I saw a thumbs up. Thank you. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna see if I can do this. I don't know what it's doing, but okay. I have no idea why it's doing that, but whatever. Okay. I'll clean this up, I swear, before I give it back to them. Okay, now this is the question for where did the experience happen? And they're asking which campus it happened on specifically, or online related to my academic experience, online not related to my academic experience, at a clinical or rotation site associated with my program. Jennifer, do you know with OHSU, and I'm sorry, Kelsey had let me know that she was going to be in a meeting, was running, I forgot to tell you, Kelsey, I don't think it's Kelsey here? No? Okay. Kelsey is in a meeting that was running late and didn't know that she would be able to join us. So we can't really ask her about this, but Jennifer, do you know, if someone is a student, would they be likely to be attending more than one campus?
No.
No.
So, yeah, so they attend classes on a particular campus and then they do their externship or their clinical rotation would be where they might then be in a different location.
Okay.
So like the Klamath Falls students are all on Klamath Falls except for their clinical rotation.
Okay. So I'm wondering if this is one where we might, because I'm worried that what's going to end up happening with these is that we're going to dilute the amount of responses to the point where they're not going to be reportable. Whereas if we ask them to identify earlier in the survey, when we ask, where is that question? If we ask them at the beginning, if we add that question that says, where do you take classes? And then the list of possible campuses. And so then they would have students who attend campus at Bend were more likely, they would be able to internally say, okay, students who attended at Bend were more likely to say that this experience happened. But they wouldn't have to get really specific in providing this kind of information in the follow-up questions to, yes, I had that experience. Am I making sense? I'm sorry. I'm not sure I'm saying that clearly. Maybe somebody can say it more clearly than I'm saying it.
I mean, you're making sense to me. I really like that. Didn't we make a similar change with another school a couple weeks ago? I mean, I like that for the sake of consistency, which is part of the goal, right? And that's a really good point about cell sizes being small. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, that's a great catch.
The question at the beginning, you could just say, where do you take most of your courses? Where have you taken most of your courses? Or where do you take your current courses or something like that? Yeah.
Or your primary campus.
Or your primary campus, yeah. Something like that. And that's will be one question. And then you could just say on campus, off campus. I think we had it like that. So, yeah.
I'm somewhat concerned that these aren't mutually exclusive categories. Like, you can associate with a campus and still be online. So
Yeah, you can't draw emphasis about if you, yeah.
well, it creates that situation, right, where a student has to stop and ask themselves, well, I'm on the Bend campus, but I'm taking an online course and my interactions were online when this event happened. So which one is the right answer?
The way that we ask the question, let me see if I can find it. The way that we ask the question in the survey is, if it happened once, we say, where did it happen? And then please select all that apply. So sorry, I know that's not very large. Let's see if I can make it a little bigger. Yeah, so this is what the question looks like: on campus, off campus within Oregon. And then we do have a space for online. Okay. And then when we have more than one, we say, please think about the experience that was most serious or had the biggest impact. And then where did that experience happen?
And I think we're coming back to what the other person had presented a couple of meetings ago, where they wanted a specific campus to know what happened at a specific campus. And I said, really doesn't matter that it's happening at a specific campus. If you having issues, you just should restate the policy and training throughout the university. Even if one particular one is a hotbed, you need to make sure everyone knows about the policy. Because, I mean, yeah. And reiterate. So I don't know.
Right.
But but okay. But like I said, I just think if I was filling out this survey as a student who was victimized first, the survey does ask a lot of questions and want people to be forthright. And you want to get to people's races, you want to do all these other things, and you're asking so much specifics. It would make me feel uncomfortable, but you know.
Ade, I'm so sorry for interrupting you. I thought you were done, and I just want to jump in real
Okay, go
fast.
ahead.
One of the things I wanted to name, I'm hearing all the concerns, and I don't have, not sure the right answer. I don't have an opinion yet about the right answer. The one thing I want to name, though, for like OHSU or some of the campuses that have so many campuses, when they can target, I think you're absolutely right. You want to give the same education to all the campuses. And if there's a disproportionate issue at one, they want to at least start by targeting that when resources are so low, at least lets them know where to start the conversation. When I mean, I know the advocacy team over there is so tiny. They've got 3 people. So I am sure they would love to know for prevention efforts if they can at least target somewhere and then spread it out. The one thought I had would be, could we they could to uh change this a little bit, we could focus on like areas of Oregon versus specific campuses just to diminish um some of the concerns around being able to report based on such low numbers and identity. I think all of the concerns that everyone's raising is so valid, and this does get really complicated when colleges are very large and have so many campuses. So thank you all.
How about this right here? How about we still have on campus, off campus, or whatever, and put in as a write-in, would you mind or would you like to share the particular campus that this occurred? That gives them an opportunity to write that in instead of the only choice they have is to identify the campus in this method and put it as a write-in as an option. Say, I just want to say it happened on campus, but I may not want to say what campus it is, but because I may have some issues with being identified. Then there's some people like, yeah, I want to know, I want to tell you that this happened on this particular campus. So give them the choice. And I think having that write-in will give them the choice. That's the only halfway mark I can think. That's like middle of the road.
Yeah, another halfway option that would maybe give a little less information, but at least serve the purpose of identifying a little bit more info is having an option saying like, did it happen on campus or did it happen like on campus at my primary campus or on campus at a campus that is not my primary campus, something like that.
Yeah, if we ask the primary question first. Yeah. Yeah, something like that probably would help. Because I still want to give them the option of not having to reveal too much. Just like we've done throughout the whole survey.
Like that. I don't know if you can read that. I said, so change the responses to on campus at my primary campus, on an OHSU campus that is not my primary campus. Is that kind of what you were thinking, Rain?
That was what I was thinking. It's a little bit different than what Adea had proposed, which I think Adea's is definitely giving maximum choice to the person who's filling that survey out. But if we needed a halfway option to the halfway, that would be another like increment along the scale.
I agree. I like that too. My only thing is we just have to give choice, whatever gives people the most choice and allow them to have that other category. It's like, okay, they may want to say on campus, but do they want to be going to that specific? So it should be on campus, primary camp. I even would say a third choice on campus, generic, or whatever. Well, if they just, yeah, that's fine.
So are you all suggesting that list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 campus sites would be reduced to these 2 options here? Is that, and then we'd let them keep the 3, well, keep the 2 online options and the last one at a clinical rotation. Is that what you're proposing?
I think it was add a question at the beginning that asked students what their primary campus is. And again, with that being able to compare, I think that was one of the reasons that we proposed the change for Clackamas, was that so they would be able to compare students who'd had experiences. So, if 97% of students at Bend didn't have a bad experience, you'd kind of like to know that too, right? You want to know if what is helpful to you is to know which campus the students who are responding primarily attend, then having that at the beginning makes sense, because that also allows, when we get to the questions about, did you get this information? What's your attitude? Do you think people on your campus would respond? They would be able to say, okay, so Bend is doing great. Bend, everybody knows everything and they feel really confident in their campus. Monmouth, we're not getting those kinds of responses. So it would allow you to, I think, differentiate better, but it would still, if you needed to drill down in these, you could do a crosstabs in Qualtrics that would allow you to pull out people who said that the experience happened on campus at their main campus, and then compare that with what they said their main campus was. You can do that in Qualtrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I gotta ask another thing. The one that says online. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'll let you go ahead. Go ahead, Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Adea, please.
I was just reading the online related to my academic experience, not related to my academic experience. Are they going to define what academic experience is? I mean, is it online, but like a course or that I'm taking? I was just looking at that and I'm like, what are they talking about here?
Yeah.
So I don't know if another student would say that same thing. So I just kind of wanted more. I didn't understand that. I know. So, I mean, unless it's online, they have something, maybe it's a meeting and it's not a course that we're taking, it's something that happened, but it was just a meeting or something. And I don't know. What is academic experience? Because I'm thinking even social settings, like a gathering of just students, is academic experience. So I have no idea what that means. And I can imagine a student going through their survey getting confused.
Yeah. Ian?
I think that's a really compelling argument, and it makes me now side with the idea that, yeah, there should just be an early question that asks what your campus is, and then we should stick with the options we already gave them, or subdivide in this way that you have on this note here right now, like maybe make, primary campus versus another primary campus. One of the things that they're trying to do that we all learned over the last 2 years as we were working on this is that our eyes are often bigger, or our eyes are often bigger than our stomach, if you will, using a Thanksgiving metaphor. Like, people want to do something with this that gets so subdivided. But to Adea's point, like, okay, I'm talking to a professor or a TA online. So in that sense, it's academic experience. But now we've stopped talking about the academic content and we're talking about this, that, or whatever. And then the incident happens. So is that an academic experience or is it not an academic experience? I think that, and again, Adea is the one making this point. I'm just agreeing. I think we should resist that level of subdivision. I know they want it, but I don't think it's going to help anything. And I think there are problems. They'll actually get better data if we just sort of stick to our existing categories, I think. Or something similar to them, not let them subdivide this much.
Yeah. Ian?
Yeah, I get this. Sorry, I get the sense that they're looking for this happened in relation to a course versus this happened in relation to like a community event. So if there's clubs, groups, etc. that meet online, they might be trying to tease some of that information out. But I almost think that should just be a different question. And that we should just have the earlier question, because similar to your point earlier, Rowan, this starts to just really narrow down the pool of who's responding to this and who then are we getting this information from. And similar to the issue with Bend, like, agree all around. I think that it gets too subdivided and gets too close to both identifying students, but also removing the utility of being able to look at the health of sexual wellness and safety at different campuses.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with Adea too that, defining academic experience, because Ian, you said, well, maybe it's not a club, but maybe for that person, belonging to the journal club is part of their academic experience, right? Maybe somebody's on LinkedIn and an alumni sees them and starts sexually harassing them, through their LinkedIn account. Is that related to their academic experience because they're a student? And, so I think it makes it less helpful. I agree with you there, Kelly. So how about we tell them, no, keep it online, just online. And I get too that what they're trying to do, and a lot of schools want to do this, a lot of schools want to separate things that we have any kind of responsibility for from things that we don't have a responsibility for. But that's not what this survey is about. The survey is about student experiences, not student experiences on campus, right? And so, we want to know in general, are you experiencing these things? I think the last one that they've got there at clinical or rotation site associated with my program, I think that makes sense. Let me get out of this real quick. I'm just trying to make sure I'm going to know what this note means when I close it. By the way, did anyone from OHSU join us?
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Janelle. I'm with OHSU, but I was just writing with Holly Ramella to see if she could help give some more information because like your arguments are totally making sense to me, and I've also been trying to differentiate what the online related to my academic experience versus not related, what they were maybe wanting to know more about. The clinical or rotation site associated with my program, there's so many placements where our students are located in lots of places outside of where their primary campus is. And so I can imagine, like if it happened in Sky Lakes or something in Klamath Falls, that we would want to know about that, or a clinic at a rural pop-up site might be something that they would want to know more about, like where their students might be experiencing some sexual violence. So I wrote to Holly, and I will let you know if she's able to write back to me to give some more clarification. But I'm appreciating hearing your concerns, and I really heard from you too. Like we're just wanting to know in general, like what our students are experiencing. I totally hear that, um, and I'm sorry I don't have more insight into the specifics. So thank you, and thanks, Kevin, for chatting me. I was just about to write to you all.
Hi, Janelle. Okay. As I was just gonna say about the clinical rotation, that's off campus, right?
Yes.
So,
Oftentimes, like in healthcare settings.
so just like we could say on campus, the two different options at my primary campus or something, you can say off campus at clinical rotation for my program, or off campus in general, or something like that. Like a couple off campus questions.
Right.
Or just say off campus at clinical location. That's
Yeah.
two options, like similar like we did on campus, kind of generic. And I don't know whether you want to know within Washington, Oregon, and all the state territory, just a simple off-campus clinical, which is the main one you want to know about, and then off-campus other.
I think all of the rotation sites are clinical sites that would be there would be off the primary campus. Is that correct, Janelle?
Yes, except for if their main campus is OHSU
Okay.
In Portland. Sorry, if it was OHSU in
Right.
Portland, a lot of them would have their rotation site on the main campus. But
Okay.
I think for the majority of the other satellite locations, that most of those are external to those campuses. I think all of them.
Okay.
Oh, Holly just wrote to say sorry, she's in a meeting. So she might get back to you all later,
Okay.
but I'll pass on whatever I have.
Okay, so why don't we ask that you change this one, add a clinical or a rotate, and sorry, I don't know why, I don't want you to highlight it. I want you to allow me to make a comment. Okay. Why don't we suggest that you change this to at an off-campus, at a clinical or rotation site. Let's see if I can get this to move. I can't. That is not located at my main campus or something like that. We can play around with the language. Something like that at a clinical or rotation site other than my primary campus.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. And yeah, and I think we don't want you to drill down into which specific site was the problem, because that's going to identify the people, right? That makes it a little too, because you probably would know how many students were at that site, and it would be a little easier to identify them specifically.
You mean like for the options that say like on campus LeGrand, on campus Bend, for those delineations?
No, I meant like for a specific clinical or rotation
Oh,
site.
I see. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And then you have classes in Washington as well as in Oregon?
Honestly, I'm not totally sure if there are classes that are held, but there's probably
Okay.
clinical rotation sites located in Washington.
Okay.
I'm not positive. I don't think that we have courses that are in Washington unless they might be like specialized courses affiliated with a
Mhm.
specific learning outcome or something.
Right. So they have students in rotations across the state of Oregon and Southern Washington. So if you have at a clinical or rotation site, then that would catch the Oregon or Washington.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so I think saying off campus within Oregon or Washington, I don't see that there's a problem with changing the language to that. I don't know that it's going to be helpful to you, but I don't, does anybody else have a problem with that change? Because I think in our original, didn't we just say within Oregon? Yeah, we said off campus and within Oregon or in another US state or territory.
Oh, okay, so I think what they were probably wanting to do is include Washington just because so many of our students are from there and have placements there.
Okay, so this is actually a change too, and is there anyone who has concerns about allowing the language to be changed to that off campus? Well, it would be, we would take you back to off campus and within Oregon or Washington. Okay. Just going to put approved. Okay.
Do we have in another country? I have to go back and look.
Yeah,
Okay,
we've
then.
got in another country. Yeah, all of these are in another. Those are all existing. Okay, and then coming down to here. So this one is asking. So this one we ask in our questions for detail. If the person wants to give us more details, we can say, the person who did this thing to you, how were they connected with the school? And that's these questions are for each kind of experience that someone might have. And so we have these options: student, faculty member, instructional research staff, et cetera. So that's the question that they're asking about for this one. How were they connected with the school? And they want to add clinical staff at an affiliated non-OHSU site. Janelle, is there a way to maybe say affiliated non-OHSU site using simpler language?
That's what I was just thinking too. And I'm sorry, I haven't seen this feedback. So
That's okay.
an affiliated okay, so basically what I'm taking from, I don't know what the difference would be between having clinical staff at an affiliated. Okay, so basically they're talking about clinical staff at like a clinic. I just repeated the word so many times, but
Okay.
so I think
So
that they're
at a-
talking about like at a clinical or rotation site with somebody who that that is not OHSU. So it'd be like, let me think about what this is saying. Clinical staff.
Okay. So it sounds, let me see if I can type. And I don't know why it keeps, whatever. Okay.
Something
Okay,
I
so I
did-
think this would be like if a student was placed in a clinic that wasn't affiliated with OHSU,
Mhm.
but it was a clinical staff person causing the harm.
Okay. Why would you want to know if it was a clinical staff person and not a patient or
don't
not
know.
another employee? Could be.
Yeah.
I think it's, sorry, I'm gonna can I hop in?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
So I put it in the comments too, but I think for Title IX purposes, I think it just identifies if the respondent is OHSU affiliated. So if there's like some kind of intervention that they might need to do. So if there's a certain clinical site that is coming up and like they're getting a report that it's an employee at the clinical site, then they can address it that way. I just know that I've worked with OHSU a couple of times on things like that.
Okay.
Right.
That would make a lot of sense.
Right.
Yeah.
We had a student complain that like an employee at the extern site or at the clinical site was the one harassing.
Right. And just a reminder, we're not trying to differentiate here between Title IX and non-Title IX. So I think how were they connected with the school if we say they were affiliated, if we have in there, they were affiliated with a non-OHSU clinical or rotational site. That I
Yeah.
think captures it without, again, and I understand if you're a Title IX coordinator, you're like, which ones are title? Because that's your lens. You're looking at that. But
Yeah.
again,
So I'm saying, I bet you that's how that
that
question got, or that answer got framed, right? Like how they
Yeah.
were thinking about it when they wrote it. I think that you could do like a OHSU affiliated or extern like clinical site affiliated, like, and differentiate that way, and you wouldn't have to. I don't know how. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to get at. I don't know, right, that that's necessarily like something that the survey itself in general, right? Like it wasn't trying to drill down like who
Mhm.
did a thing. It was more trying to decide to determine like what types of conduct we need to be
Mhm.
like more aware of, and so, or that
Yeah.
it's happening and what we can do about it. So I mean, there's just that. I think it's just about like the way the lens they're looking at the questions with, like, what are they going to do with the data kind of question, right?
Yeah. I think that what you wrote, Rowan, looks good, like a better way of stating that, because I think that is, like you were saying, Jennifer, it makes sense that they would have asked for that clarification to see where is this happening. And if it's happening with like the clinical rotation site that's external to OHSU proper, which most of them, I think most of them probably are, um,
Mhm.
they'd want to be able to know, like in what ways we would need to
Yeah, and how they
address
could
that.
respond, right? Yeah, because
Yeah,
if it's you need to reach out to the site and like
right.
maybe your people aren't properly trained on sexual misconduct or harassment, or you know what I mean? You
Yeah,
might want to have a
exactly.
conversation with the HR people there, or you might want to,
Right.
right? If you have one site that's like just that is where you're getting
Yeah,
all of these
totally.
from, then I can see why
Yeah.
that would be what they're wanting to ask.
Yeah, again, I think identifying the specific site is problematic because it narrows down the number of students that could have been affected by it too much. So,
Yeah.
and in honor of Martina, who's not with us, I changed affiliated to connected because I have a feeling she would probably do that.
I love that.
Okay,
great.
so yeah, and then we could say other staff person or administrator at OHSU, contractor or other person doing work at OHSU but not employed by it, um, or change that. Yeah, see, the problem is when we change it to primary campus, is that I guess maybe saying what we mean by school is your primary campus. Would there ever be a situation where they were, well, no, I guess that's fine. Okay, okay, so moving on, keeping an eye on time, we've got about 10 minutes left. A follow-up question to 134. At least one person I told took me seriously. So let me show you what question 134 looks like. Sorry, vertigo. I recognize this is really annoying. Okay, so you said that you told at least one person at your school about the sexual misconduct that you experienced. So this is just for those people. They're the only ones who are going to see this. Please tell us how much you agree with the following statements. At least one person I told took me seriously. So that's the one that they're wanting to add another question that says, at least one person I told did not take me seriously. And are there any comments on that one? I like this one personally, but I'm not sure how other people feel about it.
I like it too.
Okay.
I think that says a lot about the campus culture that is being cultivated at the colleges.
Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in, one of the things, it feels like this is an example when we start to get maybe too much in the weeds by adding both, did they take me seriously? One person did take me seriously, and at least one person did not take me seriously, particularly because if they ask, at least one person did take me seriously was the question, but they said no in the response, then that also tells us the response. So at a minimum, I'd encourage us to choose one versus having both. I think that's when the word choice starts to make it so it's going to be harder to read. And when it comes down to the big picture, I'm not sure if having both of them is going to give us a big picture of that programming piece for future, like what we can use with this data in the future.
Can I follow up on that and agree and add that, I mean, Rowan, what's the question right before this one? Or what's the one that in the sense that Caroline's talking about, that it asks if they shared with someone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's can you see the original survey? Okay, yeah. So it's you said that you told at least one person at your school about the sexual misconduct you experienced. Please tell us how much you agree with the following statements.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with Caroline. Like putting that it risks redundancy, and I think you get it. If somebody says I did tell someone and then says no to this, then there you have your answer. And I think there's another thing about this that I think is really important, which is at least one person took me seriously does not require a judgment about the other person's motive, right? If they acted in a way that was supportive, that's taken seriously. The other one requires that you decide what the other person's motive was by not taking you seriously. And that reverse language to me is one of those little pitfalls of survey design where you want to ask it in the way that it's the easiest for people to answer it objectively. And I think the first version of the question that we already have is much easier for people to discern than this one is. And then the second thing is if we let them put this in here, now we're letting one school fundamentally alter how this question. I think we should just stick with what we got. And I think it should be framed both for Caroline's reasons and for this other logic, which is, I think it's easier to answer I realize there is no objective, but as close as one can to being objective, I think the way we have it is easier than the way they're asking to write it.
Okay. So I think okay, so Janelle, I think what's going to happen is if you don't include this question, The reason that it wanted to be used was for education around engaging with victim survivors after, during disclosure, in addition to bystander intervention education. If the original question, at least one person took me seriously, is disagree, strongly disagree, that gives you the information that you need so that you can say that there wasn't anybody who was supportive of this person. What we were trying to get at with this is we recognize that, I think we all recognize that not everybody that I talk to about my experience is going to be supportive, but if I've got one person who took me seriously, then my outcome is probably going to be better. At least that's what the research has told us, that people who said that they were taken seriously by at least one person had better outcomes.
Yeah. I agree, and I agree with you, Kelly. And I'm sorry, I think your name was Caroline. Caroline, there you are. I agree, and I think that the answer is within what we already have here. I'm sorry again, I can't speak to the program who provided the feedback. What I can understand, like also wanting to have a clear expression of somebody who didn't feel like they were taken seriously. I can understand that, but I think that they can mark that. If they disagree. I guess there's one part of me that's like, if they answer disagree to at least one person did not take me seriously, or they could say like at least one person took me seriously, agree. They could also have like the answer to the other question could also say like they also had somebody who didn't take them seriously. But if what we're searching for is ultimately like wanting to know that at least one person took them seriously and that the outcomes ideally were then better, I think it makes sense to keep it as it is. I'm sorry, I don't have additional feedback.
Yeah. I was just going to say one thing to Kelly's point. You don't want to overwhelm someone's cognitive load.
Yeah.
So trying to say, trying to judge whether this person did not or did they really and all that. So you just want to know that someone helped. So you don't want to do someone trying to make them think about what was the person's motive and all that. So that takes too much cognitive load. You will know if someone helped and responded to you. Period.
And I do think that there is like at least the situatedness that I think is aligned with our confidential advocacy program for students is very much, we also want to know, but I do think that there's interest in knowing like if somebody wasn't taken seriously, how often is that happening? So what can we do to fix that and change the way that we're doing things? But I still think that the answer could be found within the way that it's written now.
Yeah, because if no one responded to you or took action, then they didn't take you seriously.
Right.
Yeah, right. All the no's on that are.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I see how the difference is here though, because the no's would be not one person took me seriously, and here with at least one person did not take me seriously. I can see why they asked to add this, and especially the note of like wanting to use this for programming at OHSU, specifically around education. It makes sense to get a sense of how pervasive is a dismissive attitude around this when disclosed, and do we need to address that? And so I feel like I can understand where this would come from, because even if you did have one person take you seriously and that helps your outcomes, anybody who you told that didn't take you seriously at OHSU might be something that OHSU is trying to address as well. Of like, we want to make sure any of those instances of somebody not taking someone seriously, we build programming around trying to curtail that.
But then you got the double knots in a sentence and cognitive load and trying to figure out what is that trying to say. And you can get someone saying answers all over the place because they didn't really understand it.
And just to point out too that the list here in 129, the people who said that they told one of these people in this list of options, those are the folks who are going to see that next question. So if they say, yes, I told any of these people, then they'll see that next question. so I could see where that might be helpful if you had, yes, I told the medical professional health center staff person, but if you've got somebody who says, somebody took me seriously, somebody didn't take me seriously, you're not going to know who that was, and it's not going to help you target your prevention education. So maybe you told the Title IX coordinator and the health center staff person, you said one was helpful and one was not, but there's no way to know to differentiate between which that was. And I think we did that again deliberately to minimize cognitive load and also not allow folks to drill down into specific students and specific experiences. And again, that's always we talk about that all the time in this group, right? That we want so much more information that that could be really interesting, but is it going to be useful in that way? So I think one thing that I'd love to be able to do is talk with folks about how they can then kind of maybe you do a survey out of the health center that says, have you found people here to be helpful? You could, it doesn't have to be, not every question is going to be answered by this survey. And this one says, Janelle, why, so academic probation?
I think it's because some people would take academic probation being specifically around like their academic performance, and there's other kinds of probation like
that a student might be, that a student might experience? Okay.
Yeah. So like if a student isn't doing well with their clinical, they could be put on like an improvement plan. But so I could see that, and I could also see yeah, I think I wonder how often the professionalism related probation, that's that piece about that they're doing their practical experiential work. And if that's not up to par, they still could be put on probation for that, or other kinds of probation, not necessarily about their in the classroom experience. But I also think it's connected in a lot of ways. So, but I don't know more specifics.
I always think of any kind of thing, even a internship related to your academic field is an academic probation, and trying to separate it out, but still that leads to.
I think that I totally hear you, and I agree in my one part of my brain. And then in the other part of my brain, I'm like, gosh, I was just talking to a faculty member who was explaining that their staff person or their faculty member was having a hard time figuring out how to have like an improvement plan conversation around this person, like a person's second year in rotation. And it wasn't about their book learning and what they were doing in classes. It was about how they were interfacing with their practical piece, that they should have been at this higher level of performance related to their clinical work with patients than they were at otherwise. And so for them, it was like very separate in that specific situation. But I have more limited experience working with students in this capacity.
Well, to be honest with you, probation is probation in a university sense. So you just want to remove the word academic and just say generic probation.
Yeah, that's what they're asking. Yeah.
Well, I don't think it matters, but okay.
Kelly?
First of all, I have to run to another meeting, but I agree both with what Janelle's saying and the the precision that Adea is advocating for. And so I would say let's just remove academic and just say, are you on some sort of, let's equivocate that response. Are you on some sort of are you in or on some sort of probationary status? And we should probably, Rowan, make that note of a change for like next year's. If we agree to this, if we all agree on this, we should probably change that permanently, just because it does open up and it does free people from more of that potential cognitive effort of trying to decide whether it's really academic or not. And so Adea, I agree with your point. Anything anything that somebody's doing in this context feels academic to me, but I think we can free people from that. We don't need to hang on to that word in order to get what we're trying to get. So,
Yeah, I
Janelle,
came to
thank you
that
for being here.
conclusion.
It's great to have somebody who's helping us understand what's going on. And apologies, but I need to run. Thank you all.
Hey, Kelly.
Bye, Kelly.
Yeah. Ian, I saw your hand too.
Yeah, it was just to agree. Similarly, I think the note from OHSU is really helpful here. Knowing that there's different ways students talk about this. This accommodation is clearly making it more accessible to students, so it makes sense.
All right. And I just want to clarify because are students going to know I was placed on probation? Are they going to differentiate that from the criminal justice system? And I'm sorry, I know that's really kind of a stretch, but I'm just thinking about because if we did change it for everybody, did any of these things happen after your experience of sexual misconduct? We've got all of these. I was placed on academic probation. We could say something like, my school placed me on probation. Is that?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that or academic / other probation, like anything that helps tie it back to school, because I agree. I think if we were to change that everywhere, it would be conflated with criminal justice.
Those of you in academia, are there other ways of saying probation? Do other kinds of, Caroline, are you still with us? Okay, we've lost folks. Okay.
I wonder if it would be, oh, sorry, Ian, I'm not raising my hand. I'll go after you.
No, you can go, because if you've already started, go for it.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'll be better. I think like, like I was placed on an improvement plan or I was given, I mean, I think there's lots of different ways. I think that some people say that they've been noticed, but it's very vague. And so like, I think it's really common it seems more common at OHSU to say like I have like a performance plan or improvement plan in place. Than in the previous institution where I was, where like academic probation was more normative there.
Yeah, at my institution, there's academic probation and then academic notice or something to that effect as well as one of the other ones. So I think if it were to say, like, I was placed on an academic or other probation by my school, that might help. Because I don't think that removing academic probation, I think keeping academic in there helps with clarifying we're talking about school. And I know that OHSU has other ones like a clinical probation or other types of probation that aren't necessarily to do with, like was mentioned, the book learning, but more how you show up in clinic. So perhaps something like that would make sense. I would love it to stay more open though for students to not feel like it has to be just probation.
Medea?
Hey, everybody can hear me?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Okay. I'm just thinking about long, long time ago when I was a youngster going to school. I think before you got on academic probation, they kind of force you to talk to someone like a counselor or um and that was like they had steps. First you had to go talk to someone. And then after you go talk to someone, I don't know whether that was an actual counselor, um, but he had a role as an advisor or something. So you were forced to go talk to someone, and then after talking to someone, the next step was probation. So I don't know whether that's going to throw a kink in it or whether everybody has that thing, but that was years ago. That was like, I don't want to tell you, but like circa 1990s. That's, so I don't know whether people have those rules anymore.
I can say that my current institution and my undergrad did not have that as a requirement for academic probation specifically. There were other probations that did require that you meet with somebody before you were on the probation. A lot of times probations and notices do come with a requirement to meet with someone as well. but I think the going on to probation had to do more, at least at my institution currently, the academic probation is triggered based on your grade performance over 2 quarters.
Does everyone who goes on probation receive a performance improvement plan?
I believe so. I believe that if you go on probation, you meet with the dean of students, and then you and the dean of students come up with a performance improvement plan. But this is specific to my university, so I'm not sure if this
Yeah.
would translate.
Yeah. Janelle, do you know if everyone would receive a performance improvement plan if they were placed on probation?
I was just trying to find that because
Okay.
I don't know. So, and there's so many schools, and then like we're with the affiliated institutions too. So, but like I think it would come back to OHSU policy. So I've been like going through the policies. Um, and then gosh, I would love one easy answer instead of having like 5 different schools that people are going to. So let me try and find out.
Okay. So I'm going to put this in here, and then because if probation is like more like, I think the probation question makes a lot of sense. But I think if you're already going to receive, if you're on probation and you're going to receive a performance improvement plan, receiving a performance improvement plan, if it's not associated with being on probation, isn't really seen as punitive for students, I think. And if you're on a performance improvement plan, that implies I think what we're really curious about is, are you on probation? Are you at risk of being unenrolled from the school? Rather than, do you have a performance improvement plan? We're like, how is your enrollment at risk?
Yeah, I think like my impression from just again like limited experience, but is that if a student's on an improvement plan, that they are at risk of being dropped from the program, because they haven't made like satisfactory progress towards their degree completion. So it's like super scary for students when they have it, even though like of course with the best intentions they are like the faculty are completing the plans with the students so that they can hopefully get on track, but it's terrifying for them
Okay.
because they've
And
spent like 6 years in school already trying to
yeah.
live their dream. And so, yeah, it's very scary.
And would that be different than being placed on probation? Like,
I think it would be different, but I'm looking for it and like
okay.
finding that word probation is really tough.